Hello, this is Galen Wixson, President and CEO of the Lubbock Symphony, welcoming you to another edition of ClefNotes, news about the Lubbock Symphony and all the good things that happen in classical music around Lubbock. Joining me today in the studio is Israel Mello. Welcome, Israel.
Thank you very much for having me.
Before we start our discussion, I want to give our listeners a little bit of information. We have one more concert coming up in this 24-25 season, The Concert, a tribute to ABBA. So please join us on June 7th at Buddy Holly Hall. To get tickets, please visit our website, lubbocksymphony.org, or give us a call at 762-1688. Another interesting item is that subscription renewals are now on sale for the Lubbock Symphony's 2025-26 season, and it is going to be a spectacular group of concerts next year. If you are interested in becoming a subscriber, again, please visit the website, lubbocksymphony.org, or call 806-762-1688, and we'll be happy to send you information. Israel, welcome to the show. I wanted to have a chat with you because you have such an interesting background, and I think some folks will find your position at the Lubbock Symphony to be quite interesting as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Of course. Well, once again, thank you for having me here. And so if you're in Lubbock and you just, travel south on the straight line for 5,600 miles, you get to the very south of Brazil, and that's where I was born and raised. And so I started playing the violin when I was 5, switched to the viola, thank goodness, when I was 11. And then things started to work out as a musician. Started to go to international music festivals when I was 14. Started to see what the music scenery looked like, and the career. And so I ended up getting into music, right? So I did my undergrad in viola performance in Brazil.
In Brazil, okay.
And then I met our concertmaster of the Lubbock Symphony in 2017 in Brazil, NHL Exploio, and she told me about the opportunities of coming here to Lubbock, and so I applied for a master's. I came here. It was spectacular. I stayed for my doctoral degree, and I have been playing with the Lubbock Symphony since September 2018.
That's a long time. That's
Yes.
good. That's fantastic. Now, before we get into other things that you do around the community, how did the viola choose you, or did you choose it?
Well, the thing is, so my brother is 3 years older than me, and he started playing the violin. And so as the young sibling, I just wanted to copy him because that's what young siblings are supposed to do, right? But at some point, I was just not interested in it anymore, and I was just not practicing it. I thought about giving it up. Wanted to go into soccer, as you can imagine.
Like all Brazilians, boys would, yeah.
Exactly. I almost went to pro soccer academy when I was 12.
Wow.
But then when I was 11, my teacher told me about the viola, and I tried it, and I felt like it was the right thing for me, right? And
what was different about it from the violin that attracted you?
Well, the sound is much darker. We have a lower string. The sound's fantastic. Also, I guess the function of the viola in music compared to violins was also a little more attractive. I always liked to give more support at times,
So you're not out there at the front of the stage yelling.
I am not the diva.
I'm here to love and support you.
Correct. I want to support in the most, lovable way possible.
Right.
And so, and then I started to, get really interested in it, and I started to progress pretty quickly. And so, I was doing Suzuki books, and I started to be able to go to the next song pretty quickly.
Right.
And so that made me even more motivated to keep going.
So it's for those that are a little less initiated than Israel and myself, the viola sits right in the sweet spot between the violin and the cello. And like the cello, we share an unusual looking clef. For us, it's the tenor clef, which these clefs that we're talking about, they sort of straddle the note C on the staff, and so that's when other musicians that don't play in those clefs look at them, they back away immediately in fear and don't know quite what to do with them. And your clef is called the
Autoclef.
alto clef. And so, yes, if you think of the violin as a soprano instrument and the viola as the alto and the cello as the tenor and the bass as, guess what, the bass, you have basically the vocal ranges all represented right there in our instrument family. So the viola has this, like you said, a darker sound, a warm sound. Is there a favorite piece that you play in your repertoire?
Well, that's a hard one. I do think that I relate really well to the Walton Viola Concerto. I always liked it as a kid, and I actually wrote my doctoral dissertation on the first movement of it. I used it to explain some pedagogical tools that we have. And so I think that this is the piece that speaks to me the most.
Fantastic. Well, for those of you who want to, go check out YouTube and find a recording of the Walton Viola Concerto. Really interesting, beautiful piece for the viola. So well written, idiomatically, really well written. So what a great work. So you do something else that's very, very important for the Lubbock Symphony. Tell us about your administrative job at the LSO.
So what I do is I am the orchestra librarian at the LSO. So basically, when you watch a concert, musicians do not memorize the music. They need to have sheet music in front of them.
Or on their iPad now.
Correct. Right, because we can't play an hour and a half of a concert by memory.
No.
And so there is a person or a group of people called the librarians who are behind the preparation of this music, right? So they, as a librarian, what I had to do is I need to be in contact with the artistic director to make sure that we can order the correct music for the program of the concert, the right edition, and then our artistic director will always have a bunch of little markings here and there, indications for the musicians, artistic indications that they might want, that need to be prepared.
And some of those markings are so critical that I don't think most audience members understand the choreography that takes place on stage. So string players do something called bowings. And so from the frog to the tip is called the down bow, and from the tip to the frog is an up bow. Well, we have special symbols for those directions of the bow movement so that we can coordinate the entire section and then, of course, all the strings together. So we try to keep that in unison as possible. Do you know why? I've never really understood exactly why we're so religious about that.
It's because it's a little hard to understand if you're not a string player, but the bowing will directly influence the type of sound and character that we can get, and also how easy or hard it is to play a specific passage, right? And so, I mean, if you go back to, classical period with the Stemets family, they were the ones that started unifying it because they realized that, we can create better effects and in a more powerful way if we have everybody do the same bowings in the same section, right? And so it's very common actually for the librarian or one of the librarians or the head librarian to be a string player like myself, because literally half of our job is to take care of bowings.
Okay, so this is so important that I want you to walk us through this entire process. You've ordered the music, you get this stack of parts, right? On top of the stack will probably be the score, and you get that to the conductor as quickly as possible so he can begin what? Tell me what happens then.
Okay, so the conductor will usually put in some markings that they might want, and then I will get the score and transfer those markings to woodwinds, brass, and percussion. In the meantime, the concertmaster will get another score and the first violin part, and they will bow that part. After that,
bowing mean they put in the up bow and down bow symbols throughout the music.
Correct. And all the slurs, maybe even some articulation markings, because that is going to influence the bow, and the bowing will also influence that.
And one more thing, dynamics. Let's not forget,
Correct.
because the conductor will have opinions about how things should be loud, soft, attacked, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And so after that, the score and that first violin part will go to the principal second violin alongside with, a second violin part. And so that principal will bow that second violin part. And so after that, all of those parts will go to the principal viola, and then principal cello, and then principal bass. And only then we're able to transfer all of those bowings and markings to all of the string parts.
So do the parts end up going back to somebody if they don't agree on something? How do those conflicts get worked out?
That's a great question. I haven't had that a lot in here, but usually what will happen is that, maybe principal bass will email principal cellist and be like, hey, how about we consider doing these things? And then they will have just a conversation, or sometimes they may even meet a little bit before first rehearsal, just to see what, if they can maybe change a few things here and there, or get to an agreement. But the truth is, only after the first rehearsal we'll have a better idea of what we want or not. So it is totally normal to change a few things here and there.
Okay, so wait a minute. So all this work took place. You
Correct.
did, and how many weeks occur between the time you acquire the parts to the time that the bass is done bowing? How many weeks have passed?
Ideally speaking, we would start this process 6 to 8 weeks before the concert, where in the case of the Lubbock Symphony, whenever we have masterworks, I will sit with, our artistic director, David Cho, and concertmaster, N.H. Alex Boyle, and we will sit together and do the bowings for all the pieces. And so ideally speaking, we would have all the string parts ready at least 2 weeks before concert, if not prior.
Okay, so 4 to 6 weeks you've been working on these bowings.
Right.
You get to the first rehearsal. Suddenly, the concertmaster changes their mind. Then what happens? What happens with the parts at that point? Is it magic? Do you erase the parts yourself? How does this get communicated?
Well, if we're in the rehearsal, then what happens is that the concertmaster will change something, and they will make sure that if it's only for violins, they'll make sure that the stands behind them will get that bowing. If it's something that is more for the entire string section, then concertmaster will usually let the entire string section know during rehearsal.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's take the worst case scenario. The parts came so late, you had no time. Everybody has empty, clean parts on their stands. What's the worst that could happen here?
Ooh, okay. So we're talking about something that is not ideal and that I would not like to do. But basically what I would do is it definitely needs to run by the concertmaster. And then after that, I may speak to our artistic director and see if we can come up with at least provisory bowings.
Right.
And then, again, things may be changed during rehearsal by the principals. But again, this is a very non-ideal situation.
Right. And then, sort of, I guess the question then becomes, what would happen if we didn't go through this process in the string sections? I mean, what would first rehearsal look like?
String players will not be able to play. The bow direction is so important that we will spend the entire rehearsal trying to figure out bowings. We are so influenced by what other people are doing around us that, if they play a different bowing, we kind of want to follow them.
Reflexively, almost.
Correct, right? Even if they make a mistake, you kind of want to go with them. And so basically we have no idea what musical ideas would be, how to do crescendos. What type of stroke, because depending if you're in the frog, middle, or tip, you get a different type of stroke with a different type of sound. So it'll be complete chaos, and we will not be able to play at all.
And so that first rehearsal, so this is why we do all this work, because that first rehearsal, which costs several $1,000s to put onto the stage,
Correct.
would come to a complete and chaotic halt. We'd end up bowing it anyway, but we've wasted all this time that we could have spent together making music and learning these parts and actually sort of defining the music director's vision, right? So
Correct.
this is why I'm having Israel here explain this, because it's such an unknown part of what we do, and it's so complicated and fascinating. Is there anything else you want to add to this sort of this work that you do with the LSO?
Absolutely. Actually, I was just thinking about this. A lot of people think that a librarian is just someone that knows a little bit about theory, music theory, but actually, when you look at, especially at major orchestras, the librarians are people with a lot of orchestra experience. Usually these are people with graduate degrees in performance, and so these are people that can read music very fast in any clef, any transposition, can identify things very quickly, but also have had the experience of sit in an orchestra and have expectations of what they'll find on the page.
Yeah. Thank you so much for visiting with me today. This has been a very interesting conversation, and I hope that folks that hear you will find you and say, hey, great job getting the music on the stage so that the bows can move in the right direction.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me here.
Israel Mello, thank you again for joining me. This is Galen Wixson, President and CEO of the Lubbock Symphony. Please join us again next time for ClefNotes.